Hey everyone, I'm here. I barely made it. I just got out of the car, pretty much running. Tonight's gonna be a fun one. It's gonna be truly extemporaneous. Those are some of the best talks or some of the worst, so we'll see how it goes. I always say that if you are new to this group, I always say that if you have a question or something like that, not if you're new to the group, just letting you know if you're new to the group. If anybody ever has a question on the site, I always try to make that the night's topic. So I know last week I hinted I would be talking about something else, but I think I'm just going to start by answering Lauren's questions tonight. I think they're relevant to everybody. And then I do have a bonus topic. We're going to talk about Elon Musk and in the New World Order. Because a few things happened this week that I just want to always be bringing that to your attention so you realize what we're up against when we talk about, educating and who's educating our children and what our goal is, what we're after, right? All right, so if your kids are in the room, this might be one you don't want them to hear. We're going to be talking about sex education because that was one of Laura's questions. How do you introduce how would I recommend introducing the topic to children? It's a sensitive one. We're going to be talking about the classics just really quick. We've talked about them before, but I really want to clarify what's in this book, education. And then the last topic will be Elon Musk. So really quick, if you're new to the group, my name is Britton. I am the author of the Art of Raising Children for Greatness series, which is 5 books. 3 are out. We have the first one was Revealing School. The second one was Education. And the third one is Character. And shortly, Power will be coming out very soon. And actually, one of Laura's questions was, hey, if I want to share this movement with other people, I want to encourage my friends or something to get on board. What should I do? Should I introduce them to the group, or should I give them one of these books or something? Which one would you recommend? I'd say maybe start with the group, or it really depends where they're at. If they're kind of conservative and they have their kids, they're just debating even homeschooling, then I'd probably give them this one. This will cure them of it, hopefully. If they're already homeschooling, you might want to try Education. At least it's a little bit shorter read. Or you could give them Character. That's probably the most popular book that I've written so far. At least it's gotten the best reviews. I think it's probably my favorite. So that is the series. And like I said, 2 more are coming out. There will be Power. And then the last one will be talking about, I don't know what, it'll be about the enemy. It'll be about the New World Order and really who controls the world and what we're going up against. I'm going to reveal that in the last book. It's going to be a big, fat book, and it'll be really interesting, but that'll be coming. So really quick on the topic of sex education, what do I recommend? Let me just kind of give you my background too. I went through the public school system, so we were taught sex education in 5th grade, and it was really funny because up until that point, there were rumors or something, but nobody really thought it was okay to talk about sex openly. Kids were kind of shy about it. It was kind of embarrassing. And I actually think that was a good thing. And then after sex education, they're having you yell the genitals out in class, and everybody's giggling, and they're trying to make it this fun thing and telling you, oh, don't be ashamed of it, don't be embarrassed. And they really, at that point, brought it out into the room and said, oh, it's something that everybody, we can share, we can talk about, we can have fun. It's interesting, right? And they made it not uncomfortable, so it was no longer taboo in the classroom among 5th graders. And then I'll say that right then and there, it started a downward trend. And all of a sudden, because they started the conversation, then we started talking to the girls differently, and there was interactions and topics that shouldn't have been talked about at that age. People started bringing in pornography at that early age into the school and kind of sharing it with classmates and stuff like that because they piqued everybody's curiosity. And the adults were telling us, hey, it's okay to talk about this. It's okay to, and of course, if you know the sex education programs in school are really, really bad nowadays. They're encouraging kids to experiment, to explore their sexuality. They're teaching them the most filthy, X-rated sex acts, if you can even call them that, or really just perverted things that even animals wouldn't do at a very early age. And they're starting that conversation. And we're watching the youth just descend. I think I read somewhere it was like, I want to say it was 25%, 1/4 of the youth now consider that they have a fluid sexuality. In other words, that they're not nearly straight. They're one of the other categories now, 25%. So their sex education program in the school is very powerful. It's very perverted, and it's corrupting a lot of the youth. So the first thing I would say is I wouldn't rush to have the conversation. I think that people, when I was younger, before we had sex education class and it was made aware of it, people were talking about sex a little bit, but it kind of went over my head. And it was kind of taboo. Like I said, it was kind of an embarrassing topic until the public school started teaching it. So one thing is I wouldn't rush into it. The second thing I would talk about is not just the sex act itself, but you really need to have a grip on what chastity is. And I always thought that I knew that pretty well. I went to Boise Bible College and through marriage and family classes. And I grew up in the church. I thought I had a pretty good concept of what chastity was. And then years later, I got a hold of some books. And it's funny, I just saw a meme today. It's like, I read old books because I like to read, the people who built societies instead of the people who tore it down. But I stumbled on this older book. I think it was an evangelical book. It presented this whole different worldview about sexuality and where the boundaries were. And I was really shocked by it. And I remember thinking, that's kind of like, puritanical or something that might be extreme. And then I started digging more, and I find out that a lot of the older religions, Christianity, teach the same thing. And it wasn't until like in fact, when birth control came out in the 1900s, it was universally condemned. I thought that was just something the Catholic Church condemns. And then I stumbled on that it was universally condemned. They thought it was an abomination. All of the Christian denominations pretty much in America. And that just blew my mind. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, why? And I had to dig. And so I would highly recommend you read the chapter on chastity in here. I think it's one of the most powerful chapters in this book. It was super enlightening to me. It's a very high standard, and I don't know that we do a good job maintaining it, but it's something good to know for our children. And just know that there was a time not very long ago when that was the standard, and we didn't have all of this chaos in the sexual relationships. So I'd highly recommend you read that and at least even understand what chastity was. It was funny, there's a book, a classic, that every kid should read at the right age. It's Gone with the Wind. Super, super good book. One of my favorites in high school. But it was funny because in the beginning, one of the main characters, Scarlett, is getting ready to get married. And then her parents sit her down. I think it's her mom, sits her down and kind of explains where babies come from. Now, I think that's a little extreme. I think if she grew up on a farm, she probably had an idea what the animals were doing, but kind of gave her the talk right before her wedding. And she's just kind of scandalized by it. So we've gone a long way. Now, a 5-year-old is getting sex education sometimes in school. And back then, she was almost a grown woman. And you thought, why do you need to know that before you're getting ready to be married? Maybe that's extreme. I don't think we need to wait that long. In fact, I don't think we can wait that long. But I just think it was interesting that back then, that was kind of considered, normal. The other funny thing was, when we talk about how far we've gone, we talk about sex and being sexy and dressing sexy. It's so much a part of our culture. It was really interesting. I was watching about Queen Elizabeth and how when she went to France. Now, this is post-French Revolution. Not Elizabeth, Victoria. So the Victorian era, the heightened manners, right? She goes over to France. France has already fallen during the French Revolution. It's become a cesspool. That's my heritage. They used to be strict, strong, Catholic. Now it's been overthrown by the Enlightenment. These are modern liberals. They start promoting all this perversion and stuff like that. But it's really interesting because Queen Victoria was scandalized that they were wearing makeup, that the women were wearing makeup. And makeup traditionally was something that the harlots would do to make themselves appear younger so they could continue to sell themselves. But respectable women didn't wear makeup. And I'm not saying you can't wear makeup now. My wife wears makeup sometimes. I don't know how I feel about it. It's probably not necessary, but it's just interesting how far we've gone. Where today beauty is an obsession I think that women have and men have. Maybe not being beautiful, but they put so much emphasis on a woman's beauty, and they're so infatuated or entertained by women's beauty. There's such a focus on that, both by women and by men. We've lost something along the way. Everything is about sex and being sexy, and now they're trying to say that all body types are sexy, as if there would be something wrong if you weren't overly sexy. I think that there's probably worse things than not being sexy, but there's such an emphasis on that now in our culture, so different than just a few generations ago. So how would I introduce sex education to my kids? How did we do it? This is not my area of expertise. My wife kind of gave my oldest daughter the talk when she turned 12. I think that's an appropriate age, or maybe it was 11 or something, or 10. I forget. But it was because, there are going to be some body changes that you want to prepare your children for. So we gave them that talk. But we didn't have to go into all the details. We didn't go into the perversion. We didn't talk about pleasure or anything. I remember afterward, I think the conversation later was, it was from talking about rape, and there was a story in the Bible or something, and my daughter was like, well, why would anybody want to do that if they didn't want a baby? And she's just totally perplexed, and I'm okay with that. They don't need to know why. There is no reason if you don't want a baby, and you don't want a baby until you're married. There really shouldn't be any other reason, but you can just teach them the facts, the biological facts. One of the way we introduced it to our other children was on accident. So all of our little kids almost know about it. It's not scandalous, but they saw the chickens mating. There's no way to hide that. You had to kind of eventually tell them that they're not fighting, that they're mating, because it's pretty rough. The male chicken will jump on the back and grab the back of the head, and it's violent. It's crazy. It's hard to watch. A lot of squawking. But we introduced it that way too, that, hey, they're actually just mating, they're going to make babies, and it's just the facts of life. And it doesn't have to be this kind of embarrassing, over the top, in-depth education. And if you look at public school education, they introduce the concept of pleasure in sex at a very early age to children, and introduce the idea that you can start exploring to kids and explore your sexuality and stuff like that. We don't need to have that conversation until we're closer to marriage. But for now, you can just give them the facts of life. I think the best way to do it is with chickens or something like that. It's not as embarrassing. It's an animal over there. It is a little bit kind of like, ugh, and the kids are thinking, well, who would want to do that? And that's great. Keep thinking that until you get closer to the marriage age, because we don't want that temptation. They don't need all of that. It's like Pandora's box. Once you have that talk and you introduce this idea to it, you're going to have some strong temptation, and it's something that can get loose and it's hard to handle. And so the closer we can get them to marriage before we go to a fully in-depth what sex all entails or talking about pleasure, I think that's okay. The other thing you have to be careful for is TV, because when most people think of scandalous sex education, they think of the school teaching it. When I was in school, some of the most scandalous sex education came from the novels that we were assigned. I talk about that in Revealing School. I think the chapter's titled Lewd Libraries. And basically, the leftists who run the school, whenever they get caught like assigning a book in English class that is so scandalous, right? Or they want to teach something in sex ed, and the parents are alerted because it's sex ed, and he gets kicked out. Usually it goes to the library, and usually it goes to recommended reading book lists, or it goes into English class, because you're thinking, they're just learning about reading and writing, and you're not paying attention. A lot of the books assigned, even Anne Frank, the Diary of Anne Frank, the leftists love that because there's sexual exploration in that book that Anne Frank talks about. And so that's how they get their agenda in kind of the back door. So you have to be really careful. The books you're letting your kids read, we try to keep our kids away the best we can from a lot of TV. If you're even just watching normal shows nowadays, the sexual content is very much there, and they're gonna promote that sex for pleasure, and that there's something else to it besides having babies. And our kids don't need to know that. Like I said, until they're closer to marriage. So you want to be really careful with that. The other thing, like the first kiss. Okay, I don't know if I talked about this in these books. I think it'll be the next book, but the first kiss used to be sacred, and it was saved for marriage. And it was literally God and the church and your parents were giving you permission. You may kiss the bride. In other words, you form the union. Now you can start exploring your sexuality. You may kiss the bride, and it's an honorable thing. Disney, gosh, I'll talk about that more in Disney. Disney is an educator, and they pump that idea into little children's heads at a very early age, that as soon as you're Twitter pated and stuff, that's the first thing you should do, is have your first true love's kiss. And they put so much emphasis on teaching your kids that when you like somebody, you kiss them. There's no wedding ceremony or anything like that. You just kiss them. It's normal. And so most of the kids were getting their first kisses on the playground, I think, in fifth grade and stuff, fourth and fifth grade, because that had been planted in our mind, that's what you do. As soon as you have a crush on somebody, you kind of go out, and then you start looking for that first kiss. And then, of course, by high school, if you're watching the teen films that Hollywood's putting out there, then it gets really serious. You're supposed to lose your virginity. And it's just actually, if you look at the high school media that Hollywood puts out, it's some of the most filthy stuff. If you think, and then they wonder why there's a rape culture. You look at those like American Pie movies and stuff like that. That was my generation that they were just pumping. It's a lot worse now. I think it's a lot worse, the stuff that's coming out for the kids. But that's probably, I don't know. That's probably child's play, American Pie, by today's standards, some of the stuff that they're pushing out to these kids. But that was part of our sex education. It was about losing your virginity. It was about being wild. It was about taking advantage and all of that stuff that was kind of a part of the sex education. So it's not just the class. It's not just what you teach. It's what you keep from your kids. Keep that away from them. And then the other thing is you do want to talk about perversions. You don't have to talk about why, okay? I talk to my kids about rape, because that's in the Bible. And so I didn't mean to, but we had to address that. Also, they started talking to them in youth group about it because they were raising money for sex trafficking. And again, my daughter's like, well, why would anybody want to do that if they don't want babies? So you have to talk about perversion. In this day and age, you really need to talk about perversion, because the world's going to tell them that it's not a perversion. It's okay. It's who you are. Go for it. Experiment. Have fun. It's just all about fun and pleasure. Don't even need to think about babies. Just take birth control and then do whatever you want. Wait till you're ready, they'll try to say, as if there's some sort of, there's a little bit of boundaries, responsibility, but really it's whenever you're ready, do whatever you want. That's what the world's teaching them. So at a very early age, sadly, you need to start talking to your kids about perversion. I think in education, I have one of the best descriptions of perversion in there, and it is disgusting. And I think if you actually just leveled with your kids, but I think we're very prude about it. If we're just like, yeah, here's what homosexuals do. Let them know. I mean, it's really disgusting. So I debate. I'm like, do I really want to put that in my kid's mind? And at the same time, if you really if you take away the leftist talking points, it's about love and it's just love is love and all that, and you really get down to the details of this is what they do in the bedroom. It's disgusting, and I think your kids will be repulsed and won't want to go down that road. Hopefully. When should you introduce the perversion talk? I wouldn't do it until later in high school, or maybe when something comes up, because you can't hide the world from your kid forever. So maybe when they stumble on something, when something comes up, we had to talk about, promiscuity with girls, because they're looking at these magazines. Like, why are these girls they're wearing, string between their butt cheeks? So, like, why are they doing that? You have to explain. Well, it's seen as sexually attractive. Men are attracted to female bodies, and these women are wanting to exploit their own bodies, and it's a kind of a voyeurism in itself. They're exposing themselves, and you have to kind of have those conversations, but maybe you wait until it comes across, or maybe you're preemptive. I don't know. We live in a weird world, Okay, so that's kind of my sex education advice. I don't think you even have to teach it. I think it's very awkward. I remember getting the sex talk. My dad was a medical doctor, and he was trying to explain it to us, and my sisters were in the room. It was the most horrible talk and most embarrassing. I still don't like to talk about sex with my parents. I don't think you have to teach it. I think if the church offers a sex ed program, it could be a book that they read on their own and kind of explore on their own. Make sure it's a Christian book. Make sure, it's appropriate for your kid's age level. And I would just explain the facts of biology to them. And I don't think it needs to be the parents. Girls seem to be better at it. There's some things guys don't mind doing, like gutting a deer and stuff. We don't like changing diapers, and we don't like the sex talk. I don't know. It's very hard for me. My wife is not as embarrassed by it. For her, it's very just biological, and she can do it. She'll probably do it for all of our kids. I'm a coward in that one little area. I don't enjoy the talk. Okay. All right. So that's it. And I know that probably wasn't perfect. I don't recommend a curriculum. I'm sure there's some great ones out there, some really good Christian ones. Someday we'll probably have one on Blue Manor Academy, and we'll probably have chickens. I think it's a great way to introduce it. This is mating. This is what things do when they mate. And you don't have all the anatomy, so it's not as embarrassing. And then when you get older, you can start introducing a little bit more. But there's nothing wrong. I mean, my 5-year-olds know that the chickens are mating, and they know that makes eggs and it makes babies. It doesn't have to be really graphic and detailed and embarrassing. And because it's a chicken and the chickens don't have all the anatomy, at least you can't see it very well. It's not as they're gonna understand the reproductive act without associating it with themselves as much. All right, that's it. That's on sex education. That was a ramble. I hope it helped in some way. The next topic is the classics. I keep going over this. I'm gonna go over it one more time because it's really important. It was a mistake in the book. I really wish I wouldn't have said the classics, because the classics is a certain canon. It's like the leftist canon of books for the most part. And then there's some other good ones that are just, they are Christian. They're very good. But for the most part, it's the Enlightenment doctrine. It's the canonized liberal books. And we don't have to read all of them. I really should have said great books. And I would say that there are books like the Narnia series that would be considered, in my opinion, it's a classic. Everybody should read it. There was a book, The Little Prince, not The Little Prince, I think it's just The Prince. Phenomenal book. Everybody should read it. It's a classic, whether it's old or not. I would highly recommend kids read this at a certain age. These books, especially character. I really would, when they got into their teens, my kids will be reading this character book. I think I did a phenomenal job introducing that topic. I think it's a classic for kids to read. So I would say read good books. In the book, in education, I talk about the classics and even engaging in some of the dangerous books. I know we've talked about that before. Lauren was wondering if she should let her kids read those books when she hasn't. I would not. I would not touch guys like Voltaire. I wouldn't touch him ever. And if you do, be very, very careful, because it's a deviant book. It's perverted. There's all sorts of stuff in Voltaire. You do need to know, because again, this modern liberalism, this enlightenment that everybody believes in, that 99% of Americans believe in, even Christians, comes from Voltaire. So you need to know who Voltaire is. I would introduce them at some point, maybe in high school, and I would never introduce it by, hey, here you go, because this was a powerful book that transformed Europe. A lot of Christians read it, and it really perverted Europe and twisted our theology and our way of thinking, right? So if you give that to your little kid, they may not be ready for it. It's a powerful book. It may just seduce them to the dark side, right? But we do want to introduce it at the right time. I would say middle school to high school. I will probably teach a course on it because I've read the book, but I definitely wouldn't recommend you introducing it if you haven't read it, and I'd read it alongside. Those should be introduced in middle school and high school. So if you have a 5-year-old and you read the book and you're like, oh, the classics are a great education, I got to start right now with the classics. No, you don't. You can read some of the classics. You could read some of the children's classics. I recommend this story it's actually on Blue Man Academy. It's God Sees the Truth But Wait. It's by Leo Tolstoy. It's a phenomenal book. You could start reading that in fourth or fifth grade. So there are classics for children, but I would not touch like Voltaire. I wouldn't touch Plato. I wouldn't touch those guys until you're older, and I would read the book first. Or at least have somebody you trust, hopefully me, and I could teach it on Blue Man Academy for you, and hopefully put some parameters around it so your kid isn't seduced by it. They know that the error and how it contradicts Christian theology. Most Americans today, for example, they believe in liberty doctrine. They believe that the founding fathers were basically Jesus Christ, like a newer version of Jesus Christ, or like the restoration of Jesus Christ's teachings, and Jesus Christ taught freedom of speech and freedom of this and this. Actually, he didn't. Actually, and if you go like to the Old Testament or even the New Testament church, they weren't super tolerant of other religions. They didn't believe in necessarily freedom of speech. There was a meme that was going around on the internet. It's like, when did the good, or it's always something like, it's always the bad guys who burn books, or since when did the good guys ever burn books, or something like that, right? And some of my friends posted it, so God bless them. And I didn't comment on it, but I want to be like, all the time. I can go back. I think it's King Josiah. Oh, geez. I don't know if that's right, but he burned books. St. Paul, he burned pagan books. He told him to. He burned those magic books, burned these pagan books. Certainly the churches practice censorship. There are some ideas that should not be floating around. I don't even know where I was going with that. I guess just with the classics, like I said, like we have like a certain way of thinking of things, and I will try to, even when I'm teaching like American history, I try to say, this is what they did, this is what they believed in, this is this movement. Here's how it kind of ties into Christianity. We should have certain liberties. Certain liberties are God-given, but certain liberties are not God-given. But the founding fathers claimed it. And anti-Christians like Thomas Paine, who's not a Christian at all and wrote Common Sense, convinced a lot of Christians that his ideals were very Christian. And so today, a lot of Christians believe that, and they continue to regurgitate that as if it was gospel, like book burning. That was one of the mistakes I made in this book. One of the things I regret. I brought up the Nazis and book burning, and talked about socialism and how it was actually college students who were burning the books. And I thought, well, that's just kind of crazy. It's like anti-education, and it was a mistake, because eventually later I got wise and I was just curious. I said, I wonder what books Hitler banned. Because I know everything he did. If he pet a puppy dog, is evil. We're supposed to denounce everything he said. There was a congresswoman who quoted him, and she said Hitler got one thing right, and boom, just totally condemned, and everybody hated her. Because like I said, like even if Hitler had pet a puppy dog, he was wrong in our culture, right? But I looked up the list of books just to be fair, and I'm curious that Hitler banned, and I would have banned them too. A lot of them were just filth, promoting the most deviant sexual LGBTQ stuff like today, because it's the same movement, guys. It's the same New World Order, and promoting sadomasochism, which came from the French Revolution, of course. Anyway, that's a long story. But I would have burned them too. They were filthy and degenerate. And the church has a long history, both Protestant, Orthodox, and Catholic, of burning degenerate things. If I ran the country, I probably wouldn't allow the hate speech of abortion. I wouldn't allow people to go out there and perpetuate, literally advocate for the murder of unborn children. That is truly hate speech, and I would ban it. That's why I don't fall into either category. I'm definitely not a liberal. I'm not a pure conservative. I'm a Christian, and I teach from that bias, that world agenda. Okay, the classics, there are some great classics too for kids that you could, and we will have them on Blue Man Academy, and we're going to eventually have the classics and rate them like, this is PG because of this, I recommend kids read the book Dracula. That was written by a Catholic. That's a great book. It's actually not a true book, but it's based on truth. It's based on a cult that is alive and well today that believe that by drinking, they say virgin, and they kind of spice it up with virgin women, but really it was children. It was children's blood, and they believed it would keep them young. And I don't know that this cult has gone away. In Hollywood, they're doing penis, foreskin facials and stuff because they believe it restores their skin. And there's talks about blood transfusions, how they could erase poverty by taking blood transfusions from poor children, and these rich people would pay them for it. I mean, this cult is still alive and well today. So we'd read Dracula, but I would warn you that Dracula, while a good book, is not G. There's some things in Dracula. There's some violence. There's even a little bit of sex. It's illicit in bad sex, but it paints it in a bad light as well. It shows like the evil, the seductive nature of sex. So it's a great book. I recommend kids read it, but you want to read it with your gloves on. And then There's books like The Kingdom of God, written by St. Augustine or Augustine. Every Christian should read it. It's a must. If you cannot consider yourself well-educated Christian if you haven't read St. Augustine's The Confessions or The City of God, it's one of the greatest defense of Christendom, and it would be amazing in this pagan time to have that defense. Every Christian kid should read it. So anyway, the classics we're going to introduce more and more on Blue Man Academy as we get to the higher levels. And as I can start teaching classes, I don't want to just take Plato's Republic or the Communist Manifesto or Mein Kampf, and put it on Blue Manor Academy. It needs to be part of a lesson that I teach. And we talk about the text, and we talk about those ideas and hopefully debunk a lot of them because they are dangerous. All right, and then the last one, I couldn't help myself, guys, and that is Elon Musk. I posted about him today. I'm trying to do this, educate parents. And one thing I'm going to do, I should do this in a video because probably people didn't get through my ramble on sex education. They've already heard the classics, so they already tuned out. So if anybody's still watching, thank you, wave or whatever. But I wanted to talk about Elon Musk, and I wanted to point out something. I think I said Oreos too. A few days ago or a week ago or something like that, Oreo cookie on their Twitter page posted out a pro-trans lives matter thing, whatever. They're pro-trans, okay? And you think, what does trans have to do with cookies? I mean, it's a cookie company. And you're going to offend half of the country that doesn't believe in that stuff. Why are you promoting that, okay? And you're going to see a lot of these companies like Johnson & Johnson and these big name companies. And you've been raised, so I'm just pointing it out. You've been raised to think we live in a free society, a free market system. And anybody, the American dream, it's like Hunger Games. Some people can make it, but it's a carrot that they hang out there. The reality is it's a totally rigged cabal. And most of these companies, these big name companies, they have like an umbrella company, and then they control all of these companies. And when you start tracing it back, you're like, oh, there's only a handful of major players in America. There's only a few big players in America. And I hope you guys will see that. I want you to know that you've been lied to. You've been lied and told that capitalism is good and we have a free market system and anybody who wants to make it in America can. I do believe that that's true, but I don't think it's as honest as you've been led to believe. Many of these big companies that make it, they need loans, they need investors, and there is a cabal that only invests in its own. And when you have a company like Chick-fil-A that's founded by a Christian that squeaks its way through and becomes world famous and everybody loves it, they take it down. They destroy it. And if you remember, there were boycotts and there were cities that wouldn't allow Chick-fil-A to come to town and sell chicken sandwiches in our free market system, right? And freedom of speech and freedom of religion because they didn't promote illicit homosexuality. You know what I mean? Like they didn't promote sexual deviancy. Something that it's not a new teaching of the church. It is the old teaching of the church. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament. It's always been a teaching of the church. And they believed it. He spoke it, not as part of the company, but the owner spoke it in a private meeting and they wanted to destroy him. And it was like the newspapers and you see everybody kind of coming, circling the wagons to destroy Chick-fil-A. And then you find out Chick-fil-A bent the knee. The man who started it died. The people who took over started hiring bad people. They started giving money to organizations like Planned Parenthood, the Southern Law Poverty Center. That's a communist front group law firm in America. Chick-fil-A has bent the knee. And now Chick-fil-A, they can thrive and they won't be persecuted and people will forget that they were ever Christian. And so that is the cabal. I mean, it keeps Christian people down. It destroys them. They can't make Christian movies in Hollywood. They hate Christianity, and it's all controlled. And I mentioned Elon Musk the other day because Elon Musk is, I said that they control both political parties. Donald Trump was not one of us. He kind of represented us. He wasn't as bad as the other guys, so we loved him, and he won. And I like Donald Trump. I kind of saw Donald Trump as like as a King Darius in the Bible, or Cyrus the Great. Cyrus is a great Persian, right? He's not a Jew. He's not a follower of Yahweh, but God used him, right? And returned the Jews to the homeland. I kind of saw Donald Trump like that. I think Donald Trump's a pagan. I don't think he's very religious. I don't think he's a Christian leader, but that's where I liked him. But my point is that they control both parties. And right now, Elon Musk is really interesting. He's being held up as kind of a conservative in some of his tweets, and kind of the media is kind of starting to attack him a little bit sometimes, right? That's usually a sign that he's going to become a leader of the conservative movement, that they're kind of holding him up to be our next champion. And I just want you to know that he's already one of them. And how do I know that? Well, he's an atheist. He believes that science is salvation, man's salvation, doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in Jesus or any of that stuff. Very irreligious. He's extremely liberal. There's this thing that I usually use as a test. I have to prove this theory, but it's the giving pledge. You'll see these guys like Gates and Warren Buffett, and they look like these great philanthropists who've made billions and billions and billions of dollars, and then you'll see a story like, and their goal is to give all of their money away before they die, or when they die to give like 90% of their wealth away, right? That's usually a sign. It's like the Satan sin tax or something. When they die, their money goes into foundations, like the Rockefeller Foundation. It's a way for them to have their money lives eternally. And then it usually promotes the most degenerate things, like it'll promote abortion or the LGBTQ movement. This comes from these billion-dollar donors. So whenever I see somebody giving, like promising the giving pledge, and it's all over the world, you'll see people in like Saudi Arabia, like some prince of Saudi Arabia. It's like, how do they organize this that everybody's jumping on board? You know, some billionaire in China. It's because it's a new world order. These guys run the world. They invest in each other's business. You get to keep your wealth while you're alive, but when you die, you tie that back to the new world order church, and you continue to promote that agenda. And anyway, so it's something to be aware of. We're definitely outgunned. You know, Elon Musk, he didn't give any money to Blue Manor Academy. He doesn't give money to Christian organizations, Christian education. He gives it to a Khan Academy, which is a leftist free online education site. And they've already gotten, I think $5 or $10 million grants from Bill Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Warren Buffett's a part of that foundation. And the elites, they prop up this education. They're very interested in educating your children, and you can't let them do it. And they control education. There was a story I talk about I think it's in this book. Maybe it'll be, I don't even remember anymore, but it was Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great had a great tutor, Aristotle. And Aristotle trained him, and gave him this elite education. What I'm trying to do for your kids, giving them a great education to be a world leader. Well, Aristotle goes and he writes these books. And he publishes these books. And Alexander the Great's so angry because he understands the importance of education. And he writes Aristotle, he's like, dude, don't ever talk to me. Thanks for nothing for that education, because now everybody knows it. So what good is it, right? If everybody knows it, what good is it? It's not powerful. And Aristotle tries to comfort his pupil and say, hey, don't worry, like, I did write this book, but only people who've really been trained by me can implement it and understand it, right? But the point is if everybody knows it, it becomes useless. And so when you have all of this free education, now they want free college and all that stuff, right? The masses are going to be reaching higher and higher levels of education, but it's never going to benefit them. They're going to be working harder and harder to learn more and more, but you won't get a better job for it because everybody on the planet will know it. Bill Gates right now, like coders are super, super expensive. You hire a good coder, it's $100 an hour, $150 an hour, right? And this guy's a computer guy. So what does he do? He starts doing free education for coders, okay? Every kid in America now is encouraged to take coding classes and get introduction to coding. And there's all these, he has his own, like Microsoft has their own coding academies and stuff that are free online for all kids. And you think, well, that's so cool. Like, that's so nice of him that he's just giving back, right? No, he's creating employees that if every kid in America knows how to code tomorrow, they're not going to be paid $150 an hour. If it's common knowledge, it's cheap. It'll become like minimum wage job if everybody knows it. And so they're all about, even in the Communist Manifesto, it talks about the importance of free education. And communism is merely slavery. But you've been taught, they wanted to give everybody an education to bring them up and uplift them and all this stuff. That's why we started our public education system, because we wanted an educated, working class, and we could hold our leaders accountable because we got such a great education in these public schools. It's quite the opposite. They're turning education into an invaluable commodity. It's just something everybody has. It's not important anymore. You're going to have to get higher and higher and higher levels. That's good for them because they'll be able to hire the best because they're capitalists. They have so much money. They'll be able to hire the best talents. And if everybody's a coder, then that means that the coders that get paid money are going to have to be better coders and better, and it's going to keep raising the bar for them, but they won't have to pay for it because it'll be a free skill everybody has, if that makes sense. Okay, that's the economy of education. So if you take education off the table, in other words, instead of hiding an education, you give it to everybody, they all cancel each other. That power is canceled, and now the power is money. And so they try to cancel all the other powers but money. Because they have all of it, they control all of it, and you have almost no access to it. Because they literally print the money. They own the Federal Reserve banks. They have a monopoly on all these big companies, and they only invest in each other. And so they have a monopoly on money, and they try to reduce all power but money. Because they were originally bankers. who founded this country. And I'll talk more about that in the last book. So anyway, I just want you to be aware of that. I want you to, like, when you see Elon Musk, I want you to know who these people are. And he's going to start sounding conservative. And he bought some Bitcoin. And he's against the man because he bought some GameStop stuff or tweeted something. And I just have, my alarm bells are going off because I see this often. Like, he's being set up as a conservative champion. But he's one of them. And so they're going to lead us in the same direction, but we're going to think we have our own champion. We have our own billionaire, just like Donald Trump. We have our Elon Musk, the second richest man in the world. He's on our side. Not even close, okay? They own all of them. I doubt Elon Musk would be where he is. He's a prep schooler, by the way, too. I've talked about that a lot. But I doubt Elon Musk would be where he is if it wasn't for being part of this cabal. And I say that about all of them. Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, we all think, oh, they're these geniuses that rose to the top. No, they're part of an international cabal. They probably are pretty smart. They're probably the best of that cabal, but they wouldn't have been allowed to exist and get that big if they didn't join the cabal. And if they didn't, they'd destroy him. They would just take him down. Anyway, I was all over the place. Hopefully you got something. Guys, if you have questions, please ask them. Your questions are always the topic. I know today was a little crazy. I literally got out of the car, ran in here, and went live. So it's a free stream of thoughts. Hopefully you're getting something out of it. I do want to say, one of our missions is to educate your children, but we also want to educate you. Eventually on Blue Manor Academy, there's this thing called Mom's Library. Right now I have two of the books in there. I'll put the third in there. Eventually there'll be audiobooks, but I'm going to do videos as well like this. They're not going to be rambles. They're going to be put very well together. And I really want to start helping educate the parents so that you can raise your own children for greatness. Give them that elite prep school education that Gates and Elon Musk and Biden and Trump and Obama and the Bushes, right? Like all of our presidents have had. I want to give you that caliber, but then, hopefully you'll be on our side. You'll be fighting for Christendom, not the New World Order cabal. So awesome. Sweet. Yeah, it'll be on Blue Manor, guys. We're setting up the studio. I've got things in the work. It's not together yet, so I don't want to announce it, and it could fall through, but I've got something in the works to start a studio, and then I'm going to start doing live classes, and it won't be a ramble. I know if you're watching this the first time, you're like, dude, this guy just rambles and rambles. Yeah, I do, and I can talk all day, but it'll be more focused. It'll be powerful, and I really want to give you the tools. And when we talk about Alexander the Great and stuff, and he didn't want this education getting out, and you're thinking, well, but why would you want to empower us? Because I want to empower Christendom. And it could be selfish. I could just educate my own children. But I also realize that we need a powerful network. And this cabal, they have Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, and they have Mark Cuban, and they have all of these elites, right? It's not just one man running it. It's an elite organization, and we need our own. I need your kids to be champions like my kids. Otherwise, these people are going to destroy my kids. If my kids become great, they're going to have no allies and be destroyed. So I really want to empower a lot of kids. I want your kids to be super great too, and hopefully our kids can collaborate someday and invest in each other and build this alliance that the elites have that helps them rule the world. We can build that too. We can become powerful. That's what the next book is about, power. And we'll talk about networking. It's not just about knowing a lot of people, but how the elites have built a powerful network. And it is. And you don't see it because it's behind the scenes. And it's all these umbrella companies and stuff. But like the Rockefellers you've heard of, or the Vanderbilts you've heard of, all of these big names. And you think, man, these guys came up from nothing. They were just living like the ghetto. And then Rockefeller, he was a hardworking paper boy, and he worked his way to the top. It's the American dream. No, Rockefeller was like picked out by the Rothschild bankers. Or you look at J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, if I remember correctly, was literally just the American branch of Rothschilds. Like, he represented the Rothschild interests in America. But we see him as like J.P. Morgan, like one of the titans of industry. Dude, that dude was handpicked by the Rothschilds to be that guy. So it's a secret cabal. These guys aren't super gifted or whatever. Like, it's a power. They don't share power with other people. It's a tight clique. They only invest in each other, and you have to see that. This American dream is mostly a delusion. We're being reduced to the class of slaves. Every single day, we're getting weaker and poorer and poorer. Two people out of high school, mom and dad, can barely make a living working together. We're getting poorer and poorer. And we would think, oh, is it capitalism or should we have socialism? Dude, they use both of those. It doesn't matter. If we become a completely socialist, think about George Soros. Why is he pushing socialism? Does he think that at some point he's going to give away his money? Absolutely not. Socialism is going to control the masses. Why do they have to keep sending us stimulus checks? Why do they want a universal income? Eventually, the elites, you can see it. They're always talking about universal income. They talked about it in the election. Why? Because they know you're going to be so poor. They're going to make you so poor that they're literally going to have to give you checks to survive because they're going to pay you so little. And you don't realize you're making less and less. Like, as a kid, you look at it and you're like, oh, they used to make 10 cents back in the day. Those poor people, like, we make $15 an hour. I can make $100 a day. No, you're making peanuts because of inflation. You're making almost nothing. You can barely survive, and it's by design. We are becoming a slave class. And again, I'll talk about that in the last book, and you don't even see it. You think this is the land of opportunity. You know, look at the cabal in Hollywood. You think like some Midwest Kansas girl, she's pretty, she's going to go to Hollywood and make it? 1 in a million. And that's like the Hunger Games. Every once in a while, one of them make it. Most of them go out there and they become like, what are they, seconds or something? I don't know, the people in the background. Or if they're really pretty, they send them over to Fernando Valley, which was also founded by the Hollywood elites. And Fernando Valley is the porn capital of the world. And so they use that to recruit the Midwest girls. If they're going to be a movie star, they go out to Hollywood and then they send them to Fernando Valley. Most of the movie stars, it's a tight clique. I talk about that in this book. Most of them are the children of the children who founded Hollywood. It's a very, very tight clique. If you're in, you're in, and you'll get hired for roles. If you're not, you have to be like super, 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 super talented to maybe make it. And then if you cross them, like that girl who worked for Disney, I forget her name. She was talented. She was a world-class MMA fighter, so she got the role in Disney as being like a tough girl. But she dared voice support for Donald Trump and Republicans, so they wiped her. They cleaned her, didn't they? That's your free market system. She had the wrong political views, so Hollywood has blacklisted her. I hope you guys see the cabal. I'm going to help you guys see it. And I do think if we don't start fighting back, like they're reducing us to slaves. You're not even going to be able to think. You're not even going to have to be able to think differently. They're going to tie that to your credit score now. So if you have like wrong think, maybe you're anti, sodomy, that could affect your credit score. You won't even be able to borrow money for the wrong think in the land of the free. Okay? In the land of the free, the home of the brave and the land of the free, you won't even be able to wrong think, or you won't be able to have a bank account. And they've already done that to a lot of people. All right, I don't want to start another topic. I'm going to go. I've been rambling. I hope you guys got some out of that. Thank you guys so much. I will hopefully be back next Wednesday, God willing. Blue Man Academy is growing. Just so you know, we got coders going all the time. Please support us. We don't have Bill Gates. We don't have Elon Musk. Just dropping us $5 million like Khan Academy. And so we really have to build it from the ground up, and you're just going to have to trust me. Is mine as fancy as theirs? Do I have all the coders and every program and every subject? No. But I'll get you there. And I won't betray you, and I'm not leading you astray. My goal isn't to rule the world and be a part of this cabal. My goal is to empower Christendom. I guess what I'm saying is even if our site isn't the best in the world, please believe in us. Please support us. We can never get there. We can never rival a Bill Gates if we don't have your guys' support. So, all right. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.